My favourite Holkham story, well, it begins in 1849 when the younger brother of the second Earl of Leicester, Edward Cook, made his way to Lock & Co, his hatters in London in St James, and asked specifically for a new type of hat for the gamekeeper. What he requested from Lock was a hat that was shallower than a top hat, which is what many of them used to wear, which kept getting knocked off by low-hanging branches when they were on horseback riding around the estate. He wanted one that was fitted, one that would stop the wind blowing the hat off. Most importantly of all, he wanted one that was hard. Lock duly made a prototype of this request, and Edward paid 12 shillings for it. According to Lock's records, Edward went back to Lock & Co to check out this prototype and tried it out by actually popping it on the shop floor and jumping up and down on it a few times to check it was actually hard enough. The hat was called by Lock & Co the Cook hat, after the family name. At Holkham we still call it the Cook hat. You'll know it as a totally different name. The two brothers that manufactured this hat for a long period of time eventually gave it their own name as a marketing ploy. To be fair to them, one of the brothers was chief designer for Lock & Co, and he had actually created the hat and designed it in the first place. His name was, of course, Thomas Bowler. This wasn't the end of the story, of course. The British navvies, the guys building the railways, very quickly took on board this new type of hard helmet, and they were using it when they went over to the west coast of America in the 1860s to build the railways there. It was the Wild West, of course. The local cowboys weren't wearing those Stetson hats, that came later. They were actually wearing the Cook bowler hats as a hard helmet. If you remember the famous film from the late 60s, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, you'll probably remember Paul Newman correctly wearing the Cook bowler hat, as many of the people in the Wild West did at that time, of course. Later on, the navvies continued to build the railways. By the 1920s, they got to Bolivia and Peru in South America. And the local indigenous Indian ladies there loved the hat, thought it was quite delightful. They ended up wearing it. It's now part of their national dress, and they wear it usually with a bit of colour brocade and a feather in it. In 1912, my favourite comedian of all time made his way to Lock & Co to collect the first of many Cook bowler hats before going over to the United States of America to be rather big in the film industry. And he made this hat incredibly iconic, of course. His name was Charles Chaplin. In the 1960s, of course, it was made yet more famous by Oddjob in the James Bond film. Patrick Macnee, of course, wore it in The Avengers as John Steed, and one of my other favourite comedians in 1970, John Cleese, wore it, of course, for his famous Ministry of Silly Walks sketch in Monty Python. Today, of course, we have 6 full-time gamekeepers on the estate. They all still wear this famous hat. We still call it the Cook hat, of course. They're not actually allowed to wear it, though, until they've done a year's service. It's a badge of honour for them. After their year of service, they make their way to Lock & Co, of course. They wear this incredible device called a conformateur, which measures exactly the size of their head. And then they have their brand new Cook bowler hat, which today costs £425, a little bit more than the 12 shillings originally paid by Edward Cook all those years ago.